Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me once again Roy Sebag. He's the founder of BitGold, which after acquiring James Turk's Gold Money, now assumes the name Gold Money, Inc. Well, personally, I'm really quite interested in this company for a couple of reasons. First, as a consumer, I like the idea of being able to use gold as a currency rather than fiat money because history shows us that fiat monies tend to lose their value and their purchasing power over periods of time. But secondly, I also find this company of interest as an investor because I think it has the potential to become a very profitable business. At least that's the way I see it, and that's one of the reasons I've been watching it closely and wanted to have wanted to have Roy back on with me. So thanks for joining me again today, Roy.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Always good to catch up with a new business, a young fellow like you who's starting out building something that looks like it has the potential to become something extraordinary. But just a point of clarification, if I could, I just received my own BitGold prepaid MasterCard, and it says BitGold on it. It doesn't say Gold Money. Are you going to continue using the name BitGold, that brand, on your prepaid cards, or is it possible you might change it to Gold Money sometime in the future? Are there plans in either direction?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. We've recently decided internally to use the Gold Money brand for all the traditional financial services products, and then use the BitGold brand for all the online, payment-focused products. And so kind of like when you have a bank account, but you might have an American Express card. Mm-hmm. And so the new cards that will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, and at that point the program will be launched out of beta. It will now be a fully live program. Any BitGold user will have a prepaid card in one of three currencies, and any Gold Money customer will have the same card. And so both BitGold and Gold Money customers will have the Gold Money prepaid MasterCard. We're actually going to call it a Gold Money card, but you'll have it within your BitGold account, or if you're a Gold Money account holder, within your Gold Money account.
All right. Now, if you're a Gold Money account holder, can you transfer grams of gold from your Gold Money account to your BitGold or your prepaid card?
You can transfer it into your prepaid card, but you won't at the moment, as is presently envisioned. You will not. There won't be fluidity between your Gold Money account and your BitGold account. We see the two as separate companies at the moment, serving different types of individuals. We see the BitGold product as being really self-directed. Mm-hmm. It's for the self-directed investor. You're not going to get the same level of customer service as you get in Gold Money. With Gold Money, you get a unique personal relationship manager, and that's kind of one of the main differences. So it's more of a white glove service that you're getting with Gold Money. With BitGold, you're expected to learn how to use the platform and just affect your own transactions. Mm-hmm. And secondly, BitGold is really focused on the payments component, online payments. So we want to attract a lot of merchants. We want to attract people, at the moment in time when they're making a purchase. Whereas Gold Money is more on the investment use case. You're accumulating gold, but you can also have different currencies in your account. You can have different precious metals, and hopefully, by next year you'll be able to do some other things with your account as well.
As in terms of the BitGold, the prepaid BitGold card, is it now operational? I mean, are people using it? Are they buying things with it at this stage during the beta period?
Yeah, so basically for the month of September, the average person that had a prepaid card spent $500 on it.
Oh.
And we have several thousand cards that were in the wild. And actually, the card you have now, basically is going to be, like a relic because you're going to receive the new card. So you were actually very lucky to get one of these beta cards. Oh. But yeah, we're all this concept of Gresham's law and people not wanting to use gold, and I don't want to seem combative on this subject, but it's just the way my mind is wired. Whenever someone brings this up, I seem to have a completely different view on it. That essentially, if you understand that gold is always going to appreciate versus fiat currencies, and you want to maintain maximum exposure to gold, then our technology is not causing you to somehow reduce that exposure. Our technology is enabling you to always maximize that exposure by only spending fiat at the point at which you need to spend the fiat. So instead of having a current account at Bank of America with floating, a floating balance that you'll debit throughout the course of the month or the year, you can have a account denominated in gold that you convert to fiat when you need it, when you go to the grocery store, when you need to make a rent payment. And, as gold compounds, keeping your base of savings in gold and spending, whatever you need in fiat will generate massive internal rate of return. If we just take like the last few weeks as an example, gold appreciates 3, 4, 5%.
Yeah.
At today's interest rates, that's like 15 years of interest. In a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so people, nobody is thinking about, oh no, now it's going to cost me 1% to convert the amount of gold that I need to spend into fiat. When gold is appreciating 3, 4, 5% a week sometimes. And again, as a business case, you must take a step back and view the world as a whole and the various currencies that are out there affecting billions and billions of people. But for an American or for a Canadian or for someone living in Europe or in the UK, in the last 30 or 40 days, you can clearly see why you would want to have a BitGold account. You have your savings denominated in gold. You're maintaining maximum exposure to gold once you understand the core concepts of why gold rises versus fiat currencies. And you're only exposing yourself to your local fiat currency when you need to. And thus you're increasing your surplus over time, your savings.
Yes, of course, over time, but there could be periods of time, there are periods of time when they could actually work against you. But I think what you demonstrated in the first time we talked, you gave an example over a long period of time where I think it was your assistant's secretary who had hypothetically, I guess, looked back and put her salary in that gold money account over time, or in that BitGold account over time, and came out way ahead. So I mean, it's at any given time it can work against you, but over long periods of time.
I have something. I have something else to say on that point, though. If you believe that you're smart enough as an investor to time gold over your lifetime, and think that any time that you're converting your surplus of fiat to gold, you're smarter than the market, then I have news for you. You're not.
Yeah.
And so gold should not be viewed as an investment product that you time. It doesn't have a price to earnings ratio. It can't be modeled. There are ways to think that you can model it, or there are ways to analyze the causality that would affect the prices of gold. And we've actually done that recently. But gold is simply money. And so what you should be doing with gold, once you have graduated through the educational process, is you should be always maintaining maximum exposure to it within your pyramid of wealth, and basically it's that sliver of wealth at the bottom of the pyramid. And so if you understand the core concepts and you understand that you're always accumulating metal, every week, every month, what you want to do is you want to be in the position where you are literally accumulating metal simultaneously as you are earning your salary for your labor or your goods or your services. And so you want to reduce that friction. You don't want to have to go from exerting your time and your energy and then being paid in fiat and then having to kind of hold on to that fiat and then consume. You want to go from exerting your energy, accumulating gold, maintaining exposure to gold, and then converting to fiat as you need to consume. And I think that this is the closest thing you can get to a personal gold standard that is, by the way, 100% legal.
Yeah. Yes, I appreciate that. You've definitely have structured it in this way, and it was one of the questions I wanted you to answer, because you said there were two basic criteria that you needed to meet in order to do this legally. One was to know your customer, as a bank would need to know it. to know your customer, and the other was to be able to account for the profit or loss in gold to report to the IRS. Do I have that right?
That is correct.
And so you've been able to program that, and it's fabulous. It's very interesting to me because when you think about it, millions of transactions taking place at a time with gold prices fluctuating every moment by moment, to be able to grab that profit or loss on the underlying grams of gold is remarkable. But you're able to do that, and then you'll provide a report to the to your clients, I guess, and that they can then pass on to the IRS.
Yeah, you essentially have a consolidated transaction list with every transaction line item that you've made throughout the course of the year, the time at which you made the transaction, the price of gold in your local tax currency, which you select, and then all you need to do is figure out whether you had a net gain or a net loss. And you take that net gain or net loss number, and then it's your job to decide if that was a short-term gain or a long-term gain. But in terms of the U.S. tax code, those gains are viewed as capital gains.
Sure.
And so they will need to be taxed. But philosophically, I believe those gains should be viewed no differently than interest. You know, you're earning interest on your gold balance. That's essentially what's happening, because you're only generating a gain if your fiat currency lost value. In other words, you're generating a gain because you avoided the loss you would have had you stayed in fiat.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk a little bit about how people can go about participating with BitGold and the prepaid card, which I have. I know that I have a certain number of grams in my BitGold account, which I can then either transfer into my bank account or I can transfer onto my prepaid card. Is that right?
That is correct. You can also send that gold to any other BitGold user if you do not live in the United States.
Oh, if you live in the United States, you cannot use that at this point in time. I could not. So as a newsletter writer, I could not accept subscribers' subscription income into my BitGold account, I guess, at this point in time.
At this point in time, not yet.
Okay. All right. And is there some possibility that will be doable in the future?
Yeah, we've probably spent about, I'd say we've probably spent close to $2 million investigating that issue, just because we are very careful about what we do. We've hired 3 different law firms, and we are now very comfortable with the legal framework of how we're going to enable payments in the U.S. And unfortunately, that will require a very arduous registration process for us.
Oh, okay.
But we fully intend on initiating that very shortly, and I am pretty confident that 6 months from now, you will be able to accept payments from your subscribers in gold, and not only that, but actually process credit cards such as Visa and MasterCard for only 1%.
Whoa, that would be big. I mean, my wife hears this; she'll really be happy because she takes care of the accounting for our merchant account, and they really do sink their hooks into us for that percentages.
Well, remember, Jay, that is the crux of the business case here. And that service will be live a lot sooner for anyone other than U.S. citizens. But the whole concept of BitGold is to be outside the banking system, not the regulatory system.
Okay.
To leverage gold's attributes, the fact that it can be stored inexpensively yet retains its value in between transactions, that once you digitize gold and allow it to flow freely between different people and integrate that gold ledger into the existing financial system, you can lower friction and lower costs. And so the example I just gave you, if you were not a U.S. citizen, you could, with your BitGold account, indirectly accept credit cards. Because if you think about it, and this is exactly how PayPal was built, a user will open a BitGold account, load their account with a credit card, and then send the gold to you for free. You immediately cash that gold out. Right? Let's say you want zero exposure to gold. In fact, we're about to unveil an automatic redemption system where you can basically set your vault, the percentage of your vault to be redeemed to fiat instantly upon receipt. And it could redeem the fiat to your card or to your bank account. So you're never really exposed to the gold price if you're concerned about that. Some people are. But remember, that's what we need to do as well to encourage mass adoption. We need to show that gold isn't just a currency, but is a bridge that lowers transaction costs between currencies. And so, the use case I just highlighted allows you to process a credit card for 1%, because you'd only be charged 1% when you redeem the metal back to your fiat currency. If you actually kept the metal, and I have a feeling in your case you wouldn't pay anything.
Until you sell it, until you exchange it for fiat.
Correct. Now, the person that would have paid is the purchaser, but one of the features that we're unveiling as well is if you're a merchant, when you send an invoice or when you launch a checkout button, you can pay for the cost of purchasing the gold on the purchaser side. So in that case, you would pay 2%, Jay, right? If you redeemed to fiat, and only 1% if you stayed in gold. But to the purchaser, and this is the key, the purchaser, it's just an online shopping experience.
Wow.
They go through an accelerated sign-up process to BitGold, and upon completion of the sign-up, within 3 minutes, they simply enter their credit card information, complete the purchase of your goods or services, and the transaction's complete. And now we've acquired another user as well. So that is really the final stage of the ecosystem that we're going to be unveiling, and why we brought on Daryl McMullen from PayPal, because he knows how to build these ecosystems. And I'll be the first to admit things are moving a little bit slower now than they were when I was the only one running the business and products. They're moving a lot more methodically.
Sure.
But I think the quality is much better, and more importantly, the work we're doing now will allow us to scale a lot quicker. Once we hit these network effects that we can start to see develop.
So you've added an ex-PayPal executive. I think he was PayPal Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, he was managing director of PayPal Canada, so essentially the CEO of PayPal Canada.
Can you compare your business model to PayPal? Can you tell us how it's alike and how it's different, and what advantages or disadvantages you might have?
I think right now every indicator is showing us that this can be just like PayPal. We are seeing people adopt the payments. We are seeing people adopt the savings. In that case, PayPal doesn't have the savings component. The savings business that we have is very similar to like an ING bank. When ING rolled out direct savings plans and people call and open accounts, and but we're building these savings relationships with a global population. And in that case, we're very unique. People generally use PayPal for payments and then settle out. No one really likes to hold balances at PayPal. But on the PayPal and the velocity piece, every indicator we're seeing is showing us that people are going to use this for payments. They see the utility instantly. Payment volumes continue to grow. The debit card product in and of itself can be a massive business as well. We think we can be one of the largest issuers of prepaid cards in the world, because unlike traditional issuers, we're not fixed to one specific currency, one specific fiat currency. We're using gold with a superimposed currency value, and then issuing cards on a global basis and letting the user decide when they want to convert that gold into the settlement currency. And so there's very interesting use cases, and there are very interesting concepts that I think are really revolutionary to the financial services business. And again, it's just incredible to me, as someone that's spent my entire career studying gold, that the solution to all these problems was gold. It was
and it combined with the technology that's available now, of course.
Yeah,
the platform.
We needed Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I think, to show us that there was a desire on the part of the citizenry to use something like this, and B, that there was enough innovation in the technology ecosystem to pull something like this off. You couldn't have built a BitGold in 1995 or in 2000, or you needed cloud-based computing to have reached critical mass. You needed all the KYC, the Know Your Customer, and the AML technologies to be where they are today, where you can essentially instantly know if someone's a terrorist or if someone's on a sanctions list or if someone's ID is real or if someone's ID is fake. You needed all these things. You needed someone to have a handheld device so that they could, instead of having to go to a physical branch and open an account, go through the same process, through the palm of their hand. So I think that, but ultimately, it's really gold. Gold is what's so special, because ultimately, if gold didn't have the attributes that it has, and it wasn't the only thing that is outside the banking system, counterparty risk-free, maintains its value in between transactions, and is so inexpensive to store over long periods of time, you really couldn't do this with anything else.
Which brings me to the question of silver. I guess that would be one of the impediments to using silver, like you use gold, because it's a lot more expensive to store.
Yeah, if you try to do this with silver, you'd be paying generally 8 to 10 times the storage costs. And in our case, when we looked at the business model, we decided to underwrite the storage cost and eat it. And so we would be unable to do that with silver. Our goal is to really show that in a zero interest rate environment, and I personally am starting to believe that we may never see higher interest rates.
Me too.
Yeah, and I talked about this last night with someone, but I said, the central banks really had us all convinced that they were successful and that maybe the experimentation started to work. And then we saw the rotation in assets in August following the renminbi devaluation, leading to extreme volatility, which scared the Fed and now appears to have led to a massive economic contraction in the U.S. And now they're unable to raise rates. And I think that, even the most arrogant of economists and market participants have kind of taken a step back and thought, well, maybe, we may never see interest rates rise again. And I always like to think about these things in sort of like parables, like stories. And it's not inconceivable that you tell your kids, or I'll be telling my kids in 20 or 30 years, son, there used to be this thing called an interest rate. And you used to go and you'd earn your money and you'd give it to the bank, and the bank would give you 5% a year. And I think that's what might be happening here, is we're seeing the concept of interest disappearing.
Well, it's really hard to see how they can raise rates now, that's for sure. But I want to ask you this Gresham's law idea that, what is it, good money drives out bad, or no, bad money drives out good. Which way is it?
Good money drives out bad.
Right. So why would I pay, and this is, I think, maybe a problem that us gold bugs have, and I'm just thinking that maybe it's less of a problem, because this is, you need to educate people about the concepts you're talking about why it makes sense to keep gold grams in your account and use them as you need to, because your purchasing power tends to gain over time. Whereas, guys like me used to look at this as, well, no, I'm not going to use my gold. I'm going to use these cheapening dollars to buy things. So I'm just wondering, are you finding it pretty easy to get this concept across to people?
No, I don't think it's easy for the gold bug community, because I feel like they just heard this word Gresham's law and they treat it like it's like this, Newton's law of thermodynamics or something, when I don't think it is at all. Right.
Well, that's my point, Roy. So I think it might be more difficult to sell this story to gold bugs than it is to other people. Well,
but let me get back to the point you just made now. You said something. You said, I would rather hold on to my gold and spend my fiat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the way I've always thought. Yeah.
Okay, well, but I'm letting you do that now. So right now, when you're spending your fiat, you must maintain a float of fiat. So all things being equal, what you're saying is, Roy, I don't want any fiat exposure. I want to maximize my gold exposure.
Yeah.
Isn't that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess that's right. That's right. But in the real world, we have to have the fiat because they don't accept the gold. So, but you've made it possible now with your technology to essentially do that, to use gold. Yeah.
So but what my technology does is just allow you to maximize that exposure to gold until the point at which you need to use the fiat. So this has nothing to do with Gresham's law. The concept of Gresham's law is people are going to use BitGold to basically somehow buy gold and then immediately spend it and lose ownership of the gold. And I don't think that's anyone in their right mind is planning on doing that. I think that the BitGold economic system, the system that develops around BitGold, global commerce, etc., is cannibalizing or seceding economic activity from fiat. But you, as an individual that understands gold and understands the core concepts of Gresham's law, you're not, you have a BitGold account. And say you had $10,000 in your Bank of America checking account, we'll just keep that $10,000 in gold, and throughout the course of the month, if you spend, I don't know, $3,000 a month, spend down that $3,000 every day. At that moment, converting the gold weight into currency, into fiat, and then over time, that $10,000 will be worth $12,000, and so you gained a free $2,000 or whatever. And again, I think most people that are in this position have a lot more fiat than they're willing to admit. And that's the other problem, is that the psychology around, I think, the gold bug community is such that, you'll have an allocation to gold, but that allocation to gold will re-rate or revalue upon some event by 10 or 20 times. And it may be the case, I think, that gold doesn't revalue 10 or 20 times. It revalues 2 or 3 times. And so if you had 50% of your wealth in fiat liquidity, and you only had 5 or 10% of your wealth in physical gold or gold, the re-rating of gold didn't really do that much for you. And so I think that the Weimar Republic is instructive in this case, where securities and equities did do okay. And it was just the currency that got eroded very rapidly. And so the way I live my life personally is I have an investment portfolio. I like to invest in securities, and I have fixed income, and I have equities. But I don't have any cash. I actually don't believe in having any checking cash. And I've shown this to a few people. Like, some people don't believe me. So I keep all my checking cash in BitGold. And then as I need to spend the fiat, I spend the gold down. Now, I have U.S. dollars in my portfolio, but I have it in the form of treasury bills. Because why would I want to own a Federal Reserve bank note which ranks junior to a T-bill?
Yes.
The T-bill is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States.
Sure, the printing press.
Correct. The bank note is just guaranteed by the Federal Reserve. It's not the same. And so if you understand those core concepts, again, I have a very large amount of U.S. dollar exposure because I think it's the best fiat currency today out of the lot. But I don't own it in my checking account. My checking account is fully denominated in gold. And I think that is the kind of... So again, I believe that use case that I just presented will eventually be the way of the world in the next decade for the emerging markets for sure. But I also believe that we're going to create a movement around that, even in North America and Western Europe, because people can see it. Gold's up 5, 10, 15% in the majority of global currencies this year. And so had you just done this, it's like you're living in 1970 interest rates, because you have a gold account,
gold
point. Savings account.
Yeah. Well, Roy, we only have a couple of minutes left here, and I have tons and tons more questions to ask you. You have a public company now. You come out with some statistics. I'd like you to perhaps just talk a little bit about some of the operational statistics that I'm looking for them here. I don't have them in front of me right now. In terms of in terms of the number of new people that have signed up, and in terms of transaction volume, could you? That seems to be going very well, growing very rapidly. How far and how many, how big do you have to get before you start earning money? Or maybe you're not that interested in earning money in the near term. You're looking to build a business and scale it up longer term. So maybe as investors, we shouldn't be expecting profits in the near term?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that what we're seeing is we're in the early stages of trying to figure out what this business is. And so the good news is that we can clearly see that this isn't a niche business. And many people would have thought that it was. And so this is clearly a business that can scale to millions and millions of users. I think it could scale to tens of millions of users because, again, gold's attributes and the way that people find utility using gold. I think that we're also demonstrating that we know how to acquire these customer relationships for a 5-month-old company at a very low cost. We're acquiring users in some cases for as little as $4. A bank in the modern era is generally willing to spend as much as $5, $6, $7, $1,000 per customer relationship because these customer relationships last for a very long time. Once a customer begins to trust you, you become part of their overall savings activity. And at that point, there are many ways to pull on many levers and monetize. Now, that being said, we generate revenue every day. The group itself generates revenue through its 2 separate businesses, Gold Money, which produces cash flow and is asymmetrically levered to a rising gold price. So the more gold does better, the better gold does, the more money Gold Money makes. And Gold Money earned 20 million pounds in 2011. And that's about 31 million US dollars in 1 year. So that just kind of gives you, in my view, kind of the asymmetry that Gold Money has. BitGold earns money every day. We're not earning a lot, but every transaction on the platform results in a 1% profit, which is essentially revenue for BitGold. And so it's very obvious, it's very clear to us as the architects of the business that the machine generates a really good return because it's a piece of software and it can scale to millions and millions of users. If we imagine we had a bank
and to build, you had to build branches.
We had to build branches. We had to service these customers. You remember how earlier I explained the differences between BitGold and Gold Money? BitGold could hire hundreds and hundreds of customer service reps, but that would eat into our margin. So we create a piece of software that's self-directed, that someone can use in the same way they use their email or the same way they use their E-Trade account or their TD Ameritrade account. And the result is that you can have this piece of software run by a company with maybe 30, 40 people servicing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And so your costs are de minimis. I think that we are definitely focused on growing. And I think that, this is something that has been, I think, further affirmed by Daryl since he joined, since he's gone through, Daryl went through a scenario with PayPal where he launched the business with 0 customers and saw it grow to 6 million customers in Canada and $300 million in revenues in Canada. And so when he sees our metrics and he sees our stats every day, he says, this is unheard of. Like the kind of stuff we're seeing. Jay, just the concept that the last reported number we had was $12 million, which was the gold that was deposited within the vaults. And the number is obviously much higher now, but I can't report it. But, just the concept that people would send $12 million electronically to a brand new company that didn't exist 6 months ago, I think is pretty crazy. And I don't think that I would have ever sent that much money. When I see some of these accounts at BitGold, I don't think I myself, at this stage of the company's development, would have trusted the company enough.
Well, go ahead.
And so what that tells me is that these customer relationships have much greater purchasing power that has been currently manifested. And we see it. I'll give you another very quick anecdote, but we generally see 400 to 500 daily transactions in the last week. 2 weeks ago, it was probably 300 to 400. Of the 400 to 500, 70% are recurring and 30% are first time. So 70% are people that opened accounts in the last 5 months coming back to make their second purchase or their third purchase or their redemption or their payment. And so it's very obvious that we are creating a network effect. It's very obvious that this can scale. And we're going to find out how big this thing can get because we're sitting on a tremendous amount of cash. We're not burning cash. We're very prudent about our capital allocation. We're maybe burning around $500,000 a month as a group, and we're sitting on close to $34, $35 million in cash. And so there's no scenario where 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, we don't have capital. And most likely at that point, we will know for sure whether this is a PayPal, 170 million customer thing, or a NetTeller, which is a £3 billion company that services 20 million customers, or something much smaller, or maybe something much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just, from what I can see, it seems to me they have every advantage that PayPal has, and then some more beyond what PayPal has, just by the virtue of using gold as a currency. So it's really a fabulous story, and I might just mention to my listeners that I think it might not be so much of a mystery as to why people are trusting gold money, because you have quite a solid group of backers behind you. Might I just ask you to tell our listeners, those that might not be familiar with your story, who some of the investors are in your company?
Yeah, sure. So one of the first and early backers of the company was George Soros, through his family office with Soros Brothers Investments, run by Alex and Greg Soros, who are friends of mine. The next group of backers were Eric Sprott, Albert Friedberg, who runs a global macro fund called Friedberg Mercantile Group, and who had a very big personal effect on me when I was learning a lot about gold and trying to understand the concepts. We've had 4 investment banks underwrite our financings, our private financing and our public financings, which is extremely rare for such a small company. Canaccord, Genuity Corp, GMP. Gene McBurney, the founder of GMP, is a friend of mine and also an investor in the company. Dundee Corp, led by Ned Goodman, is also an investor in one of our early underwriters and backers. And Claris, which is a boutique firm in Toronto as well. In addition to that, we've had very large institutions, which I can't name unless they show up on the ledger, which I'm sure they will soon, participate in some of our last rounds and also buying shares in the market. Once we consummated the merger with Gold Money, we inherited an even more impressive cadre of investors: James Turk and the Turk family, Adam Fleming and his son Hector, who run Fleming Stonehenge, and Mahendra Naik and the I Am Gold Group, Joe Tice from the Prudent Bear Fund, and several others, which I'm sure at this point I may even be forgetting.
Yeah.
But we really have a core group of investors that understands gold, that understands the value of this technology, and that have very deep pockets. All of us are committed to the cause and committed to investing more capital if needed as well.
And all of those people would have done their due diligence and studied the business model very carefully before they put their money in there, I would dare say, giving the names that you're talking about. Well, we really are out of time. What might investors look for, the investors now look for, in terms of drivers for the share price for the company? Just more growth? Is that what we're looking for?
I truly feel that the 3 metrics we put out every month are the most important for the future of this business, and for assessing to an investor whether this is going to be, a Lollapalooza home run kind of story, or just a kind of a tepid business. And so I think you should watch those. There's really we can't run and hide from those numbers. Either we're growing every month or we're not. In addition to those numbers, though, we will, I think, be improving the reporting and adding some other things, like how many debit cards are issued in the wild and things like that, which I think are another important indicator. I really believe that most companies that are experiencing the growth we had would have first reached 1 or 2 million users and then went public. And I get this a lot. And for us, going public was important because we didn't know that the world would respond this way to the service. We didn't know it was going to grow this fast. And we needed people to trust the brand, and we felt that going public was an important step in achieving that trust. Having an independent board and being fully transparent with financials. But because we also went public very early, the price discovery process for our shares is, I think, a little bit more erratic than it needs to be currently. And I think that as we continue to show that we're growing and the numbers are stable and the access to capital is there and the capital allocation is being very prudent, people start to realize that this is somewhat of an asymmetric bet. There's sufficient backfill to the valuation on the gold money side. There's a lot of cash on the balance sheet. And there's this optionality on Bitgold.
We'll have to leave it go at that because we're just simply out of time. I'm really sorry, Roy. We'll certainly want to get you back sometime in the near future. This is a very exciting story and one that fits very well with in the context of this radio show. So I really do hope to have you back in the near future.